Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. My name is Alice Fox, and I am the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections, and I am joined also on our team by Susan Kent, Vice President of Career Spa, and John Palumbo, our Director of Marketing for Talent Connections. Today, we are excited because we are trying something new with our webinars. We are going to be having a panel discussion, and we have a moderator, and we're going to be able to look into the discussion on embracing strength and resilience for workplace well-being. And so we're excited about this and trying something new this time. A few housekeeping items still are the same that I wanted to go over. This is a 1-hour recorded webinar. If you do have any technical questions, if you can please email John Palumbo at johnpalumbo@talentconnections.net. Participants will be muted, but you can use the question feature, not chat, but you can use the question feature to ask any questions to our panelists and to our moderator, as they will be pausing throughout and being able to answer questions throughout the presentation. Also, remember, we also have a question and answer time at the end of the presentation, so we will have additional questions then. But we do encourage everyone for this to be as interactive as possible, so feel free to put in the question and answer box anytime, and we will answer that as we go. Today, I am pleased to introduce our panel of speakers today. Our moderator is Stephanie Cantillo. Stephanie serves as the Senior Director of Human Resources at the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors. Her professional experience spans more than 18 years across education, hospitality, the nonprofit sector, and consulting. She has held leadership positions at organizations such as Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, the Atlanta Opera, and Pace Academy. Stephanie is a certified professional in human resources and actively contributes to the HR community as a board member of SHRM Atlanta. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Kaitlyn Ball is on our panel. Kaitlyn is the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Partnership at Collaborative. Her expertise includes developing internal structures and policies, coordinating major projects, and designing impactful training programs. Additionally, in her role, Kaitlyn teaches the Community Resiliency Model, which we will be hearing about today. This drives her passion for helping others recognize the importance of investing in employees' mental and physical support and adapting to the evolving world. Also joined her on the panel is Ellen McCarty. Ellen is also a certified Community Resilience Model trainer. Her deep passion is teaching individuals simple skills to use when life is overwhelming and they find resilience fleeting. After working in adversarial environments, her burning desire is to provide proven and effective strategies to cope effectively with the ebbs and flows of life through CRM. She has served as an instructor for Nonprofit University, Emory University Continuing Education, CANDID, Candid Right Management, and as a college guest lecturer. Additionally, she has co-authored 3 personal development books for women. In these days and times, I think we all are excited to hear when life is overwhelming and how to get some order in our lives. So we are very excited about this. Stephanie, take it away.
Thank you, Alice. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Excited to have you here trying this new format. So thank you both for being courageous with me. Stephanie Cantillo, as Alice said, serve as the head of HR for NACDD. We are a nonprofit in the public health space, and so excited to have Kaitlyn and Ellen here with me today. Before we dive into introductions and hearing more about your background, I'm just going to share or remind us of the learning objectives for today. So today's webinar is around embracing strength and resilience for workplace well-being, and the learning objectives: why strength-based and resiliency-focused models are so supportive in the workplace, how self-regulation makes us better coworkers, leaders, and all-around human beings, and why you should incorporate these models into your DEI policies. So just a reminder of our learning objectives for today. And first question, I'm going to jump right in. So could you tell us each about yourself and how you became involved in teaching strength-based and resiliency-focused models? Kaitlyn, if you want to begin.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for, having us here today and trying out this new format. We're very excited. And personally too, I'm excited to be here to talk about CREM. I've always really had a passion for psychology and kind of understanding why we operate the way we do, why we think the way we do, and just how we function in the world. And so I got an undergrad in psychology from Kennesaw State University, kind of born and raised here in Metro Atlanta. And that kind of led to just exploration of where I could really take psychology. I thought about kind of therapy, but then I took an industrial organizational psychology class in undergrad, and that kind of planted this seed of workplace well-being and really how well-being is incorporated in the kind of organizational setting. And my first big girl job outside of college, I guess, it was in HR. So I worked at a really small company, doing recruiting, staffing, onboarding, all kind of stuff, a lot of employee engagement for a company, and really sparked my interest and kind of solidified that direction. And then I pursued a master's of industrial organizational psychology. So I finished that up last year. And with that, I needed an internship. So I found out about Cobb Collaborative, a nonprofit. I loved all the work that we do. We focus on literacy, mental health, and civic engagement. So I really got my work starting in civic engagement, doing like program coordination for some voting projects we were working on. And then once I graduated with my master's, the opportunity presented itself to kind of move into this director role at Cobb Collaborative, really looking at more of the long-term outcomes of the programs and things that we're doing, especially in the mental health space. And one of the other things presented was this training to become a teacher of Community Resiliency Model. And that was just like, I think, the nail in the coffin with the, driving my passion for workplace well-being, for understanding how it's all really connected, and just kind of where my passions lie. So that's kind of where I am today in my journey of kind of going towards that. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Ellen?
Yes, so thank you again, everyone, for having us. We are very excited. So my path has been a little bit different. I started my career in juvenile justice in a suburban county in Metro Atlanta, and did that for 15 years, and then moved into operating emergency shelters for kids in foster care and kids committed to the state, so residential services. So the common thread there has always been, these are people that, most of them, not all, but a large portion present with a lot of trauma, very adversarial positions, very adversarial environments. People don't ask to go to court. They don't ask to have their kids removed. So the driver for me has been resilience. What makes individuals resilient? How are some people able to overcome adversity and trauma, while others who maybe are better resourced or maybe not struggle with it? So for me, the galvanizing force was really around trauma and adversity. I then moved into executive director roles with several nonprofits in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, again in the human service space. One was a large nonprofit that provided permanent housing for men, women, and children, homeless men, women, and children with HIV/AIDS. So again, a lot of trauma. So that has been the concurrent theme that has run throughout my career. When I retired from that, when I hung up that executive director hat for good, I have always trained. I have always been a trainer as well. And so strengths, I very consciously said, I want to spend the last part of my career focused on the strengths-based. Because I'm so accustomed to the deficit that I really, really want to dive deep and lean into strengths-based. So I became a certified CREM instructor, and I'm also a Gallup Clifton Strengths consultant and trainer, which is all about identifying your strengths and leveraging your strengths as an organization and as individuals. So I'm very passionate about strengths-based, but in order to understand your strengths, it's really important that we have a understanding of trauma and adversity and everything that is available now, all the tools, which are pretty abundant at this point, to really increase our resilience and build our well-being and health.
Thank you. Thank you both for your introduction. I guess a little bit about my interest in this topic as well, being an HR practitioner, and just being committed and dedicated to the employee well-being and wellness. I got to meet Ellen about a year ago, maybe longer, at I think it was Cobb Chamber was doing an event around employee wellness and engagement and health and well-being. And so that's how Ellen and I got first introduced and learned about the CRM work that you're doing, which I find fascinating. And I've gone to work with Kaitlyn before too. So this is sort of fun that we get to reconnect in this way. So thank you both again for your time. But I love that this model and technique is really just bringing helpful skills to the workplace. And I know we're going to dig into a little bit deeper later on. But I found it to be really useful as a tool, something you can use any day, anywhere. And also, you know, it leads into kind of DEI practices, which in the HR space is something I've been fully involved in and committed to as well. So I love this topic and that we get to talk about this today. So thank you both again. Digging in a little bit deeper, how do you describe, or what can you tell the audience, what is trauma-informed model? What is a trauma-informed model or approach? How does that work?
So trauma-informed is a framework. It's a framework that recognizes the interconnectedness and the impact of trauma on a person across the course of their lifespan. While that is important in all of our relationships, friends, family members, universally, it's especially important in healthcare, in schools, in organizations that work with people that have been through adversity, have been through trauma. And the reason for that is that it recognizes, again, the interconnectedness and the health outcomes as they evolve into adulthood, but it also provides a common language. So there's a common understanding and a common language that if you are a trauma-informed organization, that means that people understand that. They understand the history behind it. They understand trauma-informed practices, and they utilize those trauma-informed practices within their organization. So everybody's on the same page. So it's a common understanding, a shared language, and then that leads to the reduction of re-traumatization, which is a core feature of trauma-informed. If you're trauma-informed, you recognize that oftentimes people that have been through traumatic events have to retell their story repeatedly. And so every time they tell their story, studies have shown that they're re-traumatized. So one of the core principles of trauma-informed is having practices that reduce that re-traumatization so that people are not re-traumatized in multiple settings, in multiple ways.
Okay, that's helpful. Can you specifically talk about CRM or CREM and what makes that model unique and different from other models?
Yeah, so CREM, it is one of the trauma-informed trainings and kind of resiliency focused. And what is really great about it is to me, I think it really goes deep into the kind of why and helping us understand what is happening in our brains and in our bodies when we are experiencing a lot of stress, whether that's like a little stress that's piling up at home or at work or all of the above, right? Which is mostly the case in today's world, right? And so CRIM allows us to kind of have a little bit of compassion and grace with ourselves and understanding that we are not kind of weak or broken. We are not wrong. We are just human beings. And so kind of normalizing some of that human experience, but then it also really gives us skills that we can use to help us regulate, to help us in these moments when we are experiencing distress. First thing is really helping us recognize what is my body telling me? How can I know? How can I become a little bit more self-aware of how I'm responding, how I'm behaving in certain situations? Do I have triggers? And then kind of going into different situations with a little bit of understanding and compassion, as we understand that trauma and stress does impact everybody. CREM is also great because there's a lot of research behind it. It is a universal model. So we say anyone with a nervous system it works for, right? So it does really work across cultures, across the lifespan. So it's different from some wellness models because I think sometimes wellness can seem very like frou-frou or abstract, or sometimes it's hard for people to get on board and grasp all of that. CRIM, I think, gives a really great structure in one understanding that, again, it is just the way that my body is responding. Right. My brain is functioning in a way that's trying to protect me, trying to keep me safe. So if I do have an outburst at my child or my coworker, it's not that I'm a bad person, but maybe I can recognize what is triggering me. What are these things that are causing me stress? So kind of understanding where all that's coming from, and then gaining skills so I can recognize that and get back to a state of well-being if I'm not. Really, it's helping us manage the day-to-day stressors in life. We also say it's not a replacement for therapy. So, right, we can recognize we have things we need to work on, but it really just helps us in our day-to-day moments when we are recognizing when I'm stressed out. How do I kind of stay with my brain, thinking properly, making good decisions for myself, not sending that text message when I'm really upset and mad. So I think that's what kind of sets it apart and makes it unique. I think it's also really well received by a broad, we do it for so many different sectors, and I have gotten really great feedback, even from like police departments where it's a very kind of masculine, where sometimes the wellness things aren't always received as well. So it is just a great model that really just helps us understand that why and how.
I love that it's science-based. You talk about like everyone has a nervous system.
Yes.
Yes, that applies to me.
Yeah.
And that it's based in neuroscience as well. And so it's not like you have to convince somebody that it works or it doesn't. It just is.
Yes.
And yes, I've tried to roll out wellness initiatives or things like that don't always take. And so I like that this is really based in your own body and building that resiliency around, stress response.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, and this isn't technically one of my questions, but I'm wondering if you could talk just a little bit about like how did Cobb Collaborative and Resiliency Georgia, like if you'll tell the audience, what are those organizations and how does this training get distributed around the state?
Yeah. So with Cobb Collaborative, so Resilient Georgia is a statewide nonprofit that really focuses on creating trauma-informed communities, really across all sectors. And I think 5 years ago is really when they started, and they have done different rounds of funding. And so we were, I think, in year 3 of their funding, where the trainings and things. So we provide trauma-informed trainings for free to the community through funding from Resilient Georgia. So we are able to go wherever we need to. We can do virtual trainings. We do a lot of in-person trainings. And so we work with our communities and member base. Cobb Collaborative, we are also a part of a statewide network called the Georgia Family Connection Partnership. So every county in the state of Georgia has one of us, and really providing resources to our direct communities. And so it's our role to really, uplift the resources that are available, the trainings, the education that we can provide to our community. And so we are doing that for free through Resilient Georgia with Community Resiliency Model. We also have some other trauma-informed trainings like Connections Matter, which Ellen teaches as well. And so just really trying to saturate all kinds of individuals and, community members too. We do offer it to the general public as well on kind of a need basis and a regular basis.
Wonderful. Alice, do we have any questions before we shift into our next set?
At this time, we do not. The only thing that we were talking about, or thinking that comes to mind, is when you say CREM, people CRM think of the IT or the customer management, so that's the difference that I keep going, oh yeah, it's community resiliency model, kind of going back to that in my head. So, but no questions right at the moment.
Okay, great. So Ellen, what challenges do employees typically face in today's workplace that you think CRM or CREM addresses?
So Deloitte recently released a study that said that 77% of employees have experienced burnout in their workplace. Of those, 74% who really like their jobs, who are enthusiastic about their jobs, say that they frequently experience burnout. And then 70% of employees say that they have never been as stressed. And this was confirmed by a workplace stress study at Stanford. And Stanford found that employees today feel more stressed than at any other time in our history. And this is especially true for women. It's true for both, but women have an extra dose of that stress. So all of you, everybody is struggling with it. And what is that balance? With the onset, even before COVID, the workplace had started to shift and to change. And then COVID was just change on steroids. So, still trying to figure that out, trying to figure out what is that work-life balance? What does that look like? How do we manage both? Everything that you're doing and that many of you are doing. So it's, it's stress. It's just constant stress. The thing about CREM, one of the teachings, one of the major teachings that we talk about is because we all have that nervous system, we set the baseline and the foundation at trying to help people understand and maintain the okay resilience zone. Because that's where, things come at us daily, moments at a time sometimes, but you're able to cope. You're able, a little bit of stress can be good for you. So when you're in the resilience zone, that's when you can manage those moments. We just do it automatically. When we are bumped out of that resilience zone, if you're commuting and an aggressive driver cuts you off or whatever it may be, you have a disagreement with somebody, you can be bumped out of your resilience zone. And when you're bumped, you're either bumped high, which means that you're edgy, you're angry, you're annoyed, you may be panicked. So really intense emotions like that are higher, or you can be bumped lower. And so when you're low, that's when you have that low affect. You have that sadness. You have those feelings of maybe depression. You're isolated, perhaps. You just are low. You can't get out. You feel like you're in that well and you can't get out. So, so that's what we teach in CREM is those stressors are there. We know that. And it's not that we're trying to manage stress. What we're trying to manage is toxic stress, when you are stuck and you can't get back to your resilient zone. So CREM helps you to recalibrate your nervous system. So if you're bumped high or you're bumped low, you're stuck, you've tried everything, you just feel like I can't get out of this. You can utilize and tap into one of these skills, and that's going to allow your nervous system to give it the space and give it the tools that it needs to reset.
Okay. So one of the things I learned was the resilience zone is like you're functioning kind of normally, you're within your band of normal levels of stress.
Exactly.
But if you get bumped too high or too low, that's when you can use these skills to kind of come back to your normal state.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you are in a high or low zone, your okay zone is narrowed. So the goal is to keep that okay zone as wide as possible. So these skills help you when you're narrow to widen. Okay. That's another way to think about it.
Yeah. I think one thing to note too is that like the resilient zone, when you're in it versus out of it, when you kind of get bumped out into these high zone, low zones, it's very normal too, but we don't want to stay there, because what happens like in the brain, we have this upstairs brain and a downstairs brain. So our downstairs brain is like our emotional brain. It's our threat brain too. It kind of scans, make sure we're safe and being protected. And our upstairs brain really helps us make good decisions and think clearly and process everything that's happening. So it knows like I am safe and okay. And so a lot of times when we get bumped out, we're stuck with that emotional brain on and not our upstairs brain and critical thinking brain on. So that kind of turns off. And what we have to do is really soothe the nervous system and to get back into that okay zone where you're able to think clearly and make good decisions.
Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the actual wellness skills, which I think is my favorite part. So if you'll describe the 6 wellness skills and how they benefit employees in a workplace setting.
Yeah, the wellness skills, there are a total of 6 of them, and it's really so you can kind of figure out what works for you. A lot of them are rooted in that self-regulation and kind of tuning into our nervous system to help us calm ourselves down. So when we talk about the nervous system and sensations and kind of self-regulation, a lot of times we're talking about like our breathing rate, our heart rate, muscle tension, those types of things. And so with the skills, the very first skill is tracking. That really lays the foundation for all of the other skills. That is the first thing to help us recognize, like, what are the sensations happening inside of my body? Am I, having a really rapid heart rate? Am I a little nervous and sweaty right now? Or am I do I have steady breathing? Does that feel really good? Right. So the first thing is just kind of noticing and tracking. And so we can practice this if we want. And the audience can practice too, but essentially one way to help us kind of understand tracking and kind of get used to sensations is through this little hand rubbing exercise we do. So if you put your hands together and just rub really fast, and you can notice the sensations, like things you hear, smell, see, feel, right? So what are we noticing? Maybe some heat. We can stop if you want. So we notice some heat in our hands. We notice some tension in our muscles. Maybe our breathing, our heart rate kind of gets a little more rapid when we're rubbing. And then we can notice the same sensations when we stop. We notice maybe a coolness, some tingling in our hands. Yes. So that really helps us kind of get into, what am I just noticing inside? We want to really focus on pleasant sensations to help us self-regulate. So if I'm really nervous and I'm sweating and my heart rate is beating really fast, right? What I can do is focus on my breathing. If that feels good to me, I can take some deep breaths, and then that focusing on that pleasant sensation helps me calm down a little bit. And then I'm okay, now I can go into this, interview a little more calm, not so anxious and up there in that high zone, right? So that's a lot of what just tracking is recognizing. The second skill is resourcing. kind of like thinking about our happy place. So really it's like a person, place, thing that brings us comfort and peace. So that we can really think about like, what are things that bring us joy? What are people or memories or places that we love? And we can start thinking about sensations, again, really related to those things. So if I love the beach, I can think about being at the beach and thinking about the sound of the waves and the feeling of the sand between my toes. And so I start really thinking about details, and that kind of brings me a sense of peace and calm. And then you want to track while you do it too. So you want to kind of notice what are sensations that happen inside. If I, think about my dog and I relax a little bit, I could, use that to help me self-regulate. So that's another skill. The third skill is grounding. Grounding is a very popular one that a lot of people may be familiar with. Really, it's about helping us in the present moment, just really reconnect. We can stop worrying about that long to-do list or what we should have done, and can really just be present in the moment. We can practice grounding a little bit too if we want. There's many ways that you can ground, but really we're trying to focus on the contact of our bodies with surfaces beneath us. So if we're sitting down in our chair, maybe we're in a meeting and we're really stressed out, we need something to bring us down. What we can do is just kind of notice where we are in our bodies, how we feel, notice the support of the ground beneath our feet, the support of the chair underneath our legs and our back. And then we can notice any shifting and changes happening inside related to sensations like, what is my breathing? What is my muscle tension doing? And you kind of find the pleasant sensations, let that kind of overcome you. So can sit and notice the support of the chair beneath our legs and how that feels inside of our body. And we can kind of do a little body scan from head to toe, noticing where we are. So those are quick things you can do just in the moment. There's a lot of research too around kind of grounding with textures and things. So there's like, sensory strips. People love grounding barefoot. So there's many ways you can do it. And those are like the three main skills. So there is an app that goes along with all of these skills too. It's called iChill, and they actually just updated it. So great. It has a lot of new features, and it's available in more languages now. It's available in 5 total languages.
So just iChill.
iChill.
Okay.
Yep. iChill
For listeners.
Yes. And that's a really great way to practice a lot of these skills, introduce yourself to the community resiliency model, understanding the resilient zone, and kind of practicing for yourself when you need it. And it's great for employees for so many different reasons. But, when we think about working together and collaborating, if we are really stressed out or if we're not present, right, we're not going to work together as well. We're going to be just in a million places. We also, as employees, can experience burnout. We can experience secondary traumatic stress, all of these things, vicarious trauma. And so the skills are really great in one, helping ourselves recognize when I might need a little support and a little help, but then we can also use them with clients too. So if you have individuals that you're working with or clients you're working with that you can tell they're a little stressed out too, right? We can co-regulate together and just help us be a little bit more cohesive.
Great, thank you. So, okay, just to recap.
Yes.
So tracking, and that's just like recognizing the physical sensations in your body currently in this moment.
Yes.
And if you're feeling tension or stressed, or like where in your body are you anxious perhaps?
Yeah.
And then the second one is resourcing, which is like a joyful or a happy memory or thought or person experience. Like, would that be like going for a walk, or is that more the grounding part?
That would be probably more grounding.
Okay.
If we were to like physically go out, go for a walk. There's also some help now skills that we call, those are kind of immediate things to help us really reconnect in the moment. So if you're bumped out and need something immediately, things like going for a walk, taking a drink of water, a lot of those are very quick to reset you. But with, maybe you have a favorite place that you walk, and that could be your resource. So if you have a trail, we're so close to the Chattahoochee, and there's so many beautiful trails along and being out in nature too is a great resource. And so, if you have a place that you love to go walking or running, and that's your thing, you don't have to physically be doing that, but thinking about that resource, that thing that brings you joy, can help spark those kind of pleasant memories, pleasant sensations, and then you can focus on the pleasant sensations that you experience while you're thinking about that resource. So
if you're in a meeting and you're stressed, you can be thinking about your spa treatment last week.
Right.
What can I think about today?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the resourcing, and then the grounding is doing something physically to kind of help your energy go down and bring your, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any expansion on those, or can we dive into the next question, or any questions from the audience? And if not, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the moment, we're all rubbing our hands and picturing our special place. So I was like, oh, wait, they asked me something, because we're feverishly writing over here. Yeah, exactly. And we are trying to put the iChill app in the questions and answer to make sure that people know about that app, because I think it's fantastic. So yeah, you brought me back to reality here for a second, but no, so far we are good, and we're all just writing down all the things we're learning. So thank you for all the visuals and the exercises, for sure.
So one thing I would just say to kind of bring this full circle, this is what really helps me when you're thinking about CREM and we're thinking about our bodies and sensations. I have two quotes that I love. One is, sensations is how our body talks to us. So it's how it's listening to our body. So when you think about a time you've been cold, or you felt a cold coming on, and you had body sensations that alerted you, that's what CREM can do. It can help you when you are aware of those sensations to identify those sensations and maybe the source, and then you can do what you need to do to restore. The other quote is, our body is a language, and it speaks in ways with the wisdom that words can't express. So our body talks to us. It is a language of itself. I like to think of CREM actually as a language of sensations, because that's really what it is. It's a language. We have sensations that are happening that are speaking to us. It has a wisdom if we listen, if we learn, and if we lean into that, then we have control. And control is really what is the key to all of this, is recognizing the identification and then the application, applying one of the skills, and then the restoration.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. So can you share a specific example of how the CREM skills have made a positive impact within an organization? I know you've done a lot of training with employees, myself included. So could you maybe give an example of how it's helped a client or an organization and the employees in their workspace?
Why don't you give that, and then I'm gonna give one that's a little unique.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you may have talked about the research and stuff with well, I know at Emory University there's a lot of research with the COVID nurses, and so that is something that people can look on their website. Go to the Trauma Resource Institute. You can see all the bodies of research that they have. And so that one in particular, I don't know if you want to speak on that, or.
So, yeah, so during COVID, there was a study, and there were over like 275, 300 healthcare workers from all over Metro Atlanta.
Okay.
So this was during the height of COVID. But one cohort of that were Emory nurses. And so you can imagine the toxic stress that they were living under in the hospital setting. And so they had the nurses to pin a swatch of cloth onto their scrubs. And so when they found themselves getting bumped out of their, well, actually, they weren't even in a resilient zone. But when they found themselves escalating
Yeah.
and really, really struggling in a very, very toxic situation, they asked them to just rub that piece of material, so the tactile, and then they recorded their sensations, and they found heightened ability to restore their well-being more quickly, to feel more resilient, to feel more hopeful. And then an unexpected outcome. They were hoping for those outcomes, but the one that was unexpected that was really very cool too was that they found that individuals, and this was a 1 hour, let me back up, this was a 1 hour CRIM session. So not even the long, they went through a 1 hour session.
Wow,
These healthcare
training.
workers.
Okay.
Yes.
And these were the results just after that one.
Exactly.
Okay.
That the workers had a greater appreciation of each other, and they worked better together, which was really quite significant and as I said, unexpected. But yeah, it's there are multiple, these are national and international studies.
Okay.
So as Kaitlyn said, if you go to TRI's website, they have an entire feature on just all the studies that are being conducted.
What's the website so we can just tell?
The Trauma Resource Institute.
Trauma Resource Institute. Okay.
And then Georgia has its own.
Okay.
It has its own Georgia CRIM.
Okay.
So you can go to it as well. But you had asked about other ways that it worked. And that was a great example of an organization wide.
Right.
And then I think for individuals, I've been involved in a really unique opportunity to deliver CRIM to adolescent boys, males, who are in the statewide detention center. So these would be kids that have been committed to the state, that will either be committed for 2 to 5 years.
Okay.
So there's a pathway for many of them that does not have a good outcome.
Yeah.
And so myself and a couple of the instructors have been teaching CRIM to these males. And so we recently got some evaluation results back, and it was really, really powerful. I mean, they talked about how, no one had ever talked to them. They didn't understand that they really had a choice in how they responded to situations. And that was the most powerful part of it, was to see how they were reflecting on their own behavior, and how, I didn't know, I know I have an anger management problem, but I didn't know that there were things that I could do that could help me with that. So when you see the universal ways that you can use CRIM with any population,
right,
that's when you have some transformational moments. And that's really what CRIM is about, is creating those transformational moments that give you a sense of control over your life.
Right. Wow. That's really beautiful.
Mhm.
I used to work in schools, and we would talk about self-regulation or emotional regulation with the kids, but we needed it as adults.
Right.
Like, it's not just for the
Totally.
kids, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna kind of jumping off of that too. I think, we've had the kind of research and that, but even just from personal experience and like the tidbits that I've taken away from a lot of it, the great thing about CRIM is that it is such a unique experience and individual journey that you never really know how it's going to stick. And there was one experience where I did a training, and months later I ran into one of the participants, and she had come up to me and was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know I've really been thinking CREM still. Like I
Wow.
have gone through something personally that has led me to have increased anxiety and all of these things. And I was feeling it in my body and remembered that slide that you showed and pulled out my CREM card and had these skills. So, you know, I think it's one of those things where when we're talking about wellness and employee well-being, sometimes it's like in the workplace, it's only, but it's like there's so much overlap in the
Sure.
way that our lives work. And so just having these skills for ourselves personally when we need them in a workplace setting. And then with each kind of CREM session too, it again can really be unique in what you take away from it. So
Yeah.
did a training with a group of counselors at a middle school
Okay.
who kind of had some of this background too, but you know, we took away some really great like plans afterward, and we're like, okay, how can we really incorporate this trauma-informed model for our students? And maybe after we do like those school-wide drills where we're, you know, preparing them for active shooters and
Sure.
kind of creating these stressful environments for them.
Yep.
How can we maybe do like a community or school-wide grounding session or something to really incorporate the wellness skills and creating opportunities for the wellness skills into their setting, because every setting is unique and individual and what you need and the workplace or setting itself needs. So it really allows you to explore, what does that look like for me? What does that look like for this group, these people I'm working with? And I think that's one of the greatest things about CREM too.
Applicable to a variety of settings
Yes.
and populations.
Absolutely.
So what would you recommend, like if there's, you know, HR leaders listening or other people leaders listening, kind of how could they incorporate this at work, or what might be next steps for them to learn more? I know we talked about the app. Any other like resources, or could they schedule to have this training for their own place of work, or kind of what would you recommend for folks listening?
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
All of the above.
All of the above, yes, all of the above. I believe at the end, our contact information is going to be, so yeah, just reaching out to us and letting us know that there's an interest there. And then if you want to, I'm someone that really loves the research, and I love understanding, going really, really deep. So the Trauma Resource Institute has not just tons of study about CREM, but just some really good educational pieces. And CREM Georgia also has resources specifically for Georgia.
Okay.
And then Resilient Georgia. I would
Okay.
absolutely highly recommend that you go to Resilient Georgia. Resilient Georgia was created because a group of key influencers within the philanthropic, the private, and the nonprofit sector really wanted to focus on making Georgia a trauma-informed state, and conducted a year's worth of research nationally, and then launched Resilient Georgia. So it has a larger focus. It is really to create a baseline foundational understanding across the state of what trauma-informed is and trauma-informed practices. So looking at those resources that are available, there is with the Resilient Georgia, you may be interested. They have done national scans and statewide scans.
Okay.
So, and these are done in buckets. So, or they looked at buckets. So for example, healthcare, education system, juvenile justice, child welfare, workplace, all these different buckets. And then they looked across the country at best practice evidence-based programs that fit within those buckets. So you can actually go to the website and you can go to those scans and you can see their rating. So yeah, so it's a ranking. So you can click on one and say, for example, Washington State is very well known for, they do a lot of good trauma-informed work. You could see a program in Washington State, you can click on it, and it will give you a description of that program, and it will give you the contact information. So it's a direct linkage to other evidence-based programs in any of those buckets. That is a phenomenal resource.
And one of the buckets is workplace, like
Mhm.
workplace environment.
Business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Business, faith, communities, yeah,
Okay.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of their, I think it's called their roadmap to trauma informed.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, you can kind of click on whatever sector you may fall under. And there are kind of levels to trauma informed care too. So they kind of explains like the 3 levels based on the Missouri model, and kind of goes through different resources with each of those. So that's a really great resource. Like I said, we are grant funded through Resilient Georgia,
Okay.
so we're able to provide trainings to the community. So if anyone is interested in getting trained, we can provide that. We can do virtual. But then I think also just really looking at what are maybe some of the issues in your workplace, like really kind of taking a moment to self-reflect, do a little
Sure.
needs assessment, and figuring out like what do my employees want? What
Yeah.
are the struggles? So I can really figure out what I need to do to really incorporate some more wellness, figuring out where maybe some of the gaps are, to really kind of inform how you move forward. Because it's not a one size, wellness is not
Sure.
a one
Yeah.
size fits all
Absolutely.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think really understanding what it is, and kind of getting to like the core root issues of things and how can we support that. And there's so many resources out there, lots of videos and stuff. And I feel like I see CRIM kind of incorporated in a
Sure.
lot of
Yeah.
things and self-regulation. So
Yeah, and I would just, to piggyback on that, there is a lot of research. As a Clifton
Mhm.
Strengths consultant, I have access to all of Gallup's research.
Okay.
Gallup, Deloitte, McKinsey,
Yeah.
there is so much. It is just the hot topic of the moment.
Okay.
So there are more resources than there have ever been.
Around building resiliency in general.
And well-being and health within
Yeah.
the workplace,
Okay.
work-life balance, engagement. Engagement is the
Absolutely.
huge issue these days. And engagement is also tied to how do organizations identify the strengths of their employees and how do they leverage those strengths?
Yeah.
So it's all intertwined, but there's so much good information and good tools.
Well, I feel like we could keep talking. I know we have to kind
I
of
know.
get nearer to wrapping up so we can leave some room for questions. But I was just curious, like personally, how has teaching these techniques impacted your own life and well-being throughout your journeys?
yeah, it's funny. I had kind of a realization moment recently, the other day with kind of a CRIM and I think a trauma-informed approach and really how it's like saturating into just the way that I think and approach relationships and things. I was talking with my mom and we were talking about something and she was telling me how she thought I needed to do it, and it was a little triggering for me. And so we were talking and kind of started thinking about a little bit of generational trauma that and so in that moment I just realized like I had this understanding and compassion for my mom of like, okay, this is not her fault necessarily, or the way that maybe she responds in certain situations or with certain triggers, right? It's not necessarily her fault, and but it allows me to approach that situation differently. I'm not taking it so personally, or I'm not being offended as much. I'm realizing this is her way of kind of having that defense or coping mechanism that has served her in the past. So for me, rather than like taking it very personally and being triggered and escalating myself in those moments, and I think that's a lot of what CRIM teaches us is about recognizing these small little moments where we do have choice, because so much of life is out of our control, but we do have control in the way that we respond and behave. And so I think just having that frame of mind in having a little more grace and compassion and
Absolutely.
understanding for others, even my partner, you know, if we're
Yeah.
like getting into an argument
Colleagues,
or
yeah.
something, colleagues, whatever that may be, just approaching things a little bit differently with a trauma-informed lens has helped me in the way that I respond and
Yeah.
react.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I can see that. It's
yeah.
really helpful. Any last thoughts, Ellen, or anything else you'd like the audience to know, or, you know, just, it could be anything about well-being or supporting employees in the workplace.
Yeah. A couple of things about CRIM that I think are important. As Kaitlyn pointed out, CRIM is a universal model. It's a tool, you know, it's a tool in our toolkit.
Yes.
But it can also be, it can be a little confusing because it's a very simple model. And sometimes there's a bias against the simplicity. And I get that. I mean, you know, we are a society that thinks a lot about feeling and thinking, you know, for decades. That's really been the core. What are you thinking? How do you feel about that? Sensations is a new language, and it's only become mainstream in the last 10, 15, 20 years as there's been increased understanding of brain and brain development and how the interconnectedness between trauma and the brain, all of that. And so I just want to put that out there, that the skills can seem so simple that you could find yourself easily saying, how does this even work? I mean, how is this even possible? And I don't know the answer to that. But what we know is that the science is there. There have been a multitude of studies. And so, you know, the science is there. The science, it's evidence informed, it's evidence based. These work. Mindfulness is a real thing. So that's one thing that I would say. And then I would just leave the participants with something that I heard recently, and this was the founder and the chief researcher of Harvard's Institute of Mind, Body, and Healing.
Okay.
And he was being interviewed, and he was talking about the 4 brain circuits that are so critical that we have only in the last 10, 15 years really been able to quantify, such as generosity. We actually have a generosity circuit. So anecdotally, you know, we've heard for years that when you give, you get more back, all of that. Well, the science is there, that it really is a fact. It is a scientific fact because it releases hormones in our body, not just one, but 4 different hormones in our body. That really put us into a heightened state of well-being. But anyway, that was one of the 4 circuits. What he said at the end was so powerful. The question was, what would you say? What is the one thing you would say to people? And he said, the one thing I would say to people is that every morning when you get up, you need to set your morning in a positive frame of mind. So whether it's positive affirmations, where it's positive self-talk, whatever it is, because if you do the opposite, each one of those directions that you choose and you consciously choose, each one of those wires your brain in a certain way. So you are actually, every morning when you get up, your thoughts, your first thoughts are wiring your brain for your thinking for the rest of the day. So think positive thoughts, say positive thoughts in the morning, and it's going to wire your brain in such a way that that's going to be easier to do throughout the rest of your day. I thought that was pretty powerful.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems so simple.
No, it does. It does.
It can be hard to do.
Yeah.
I know we are getting close on time, Alice. I'm just going to check in with you briefly.
Yes, Ladies, we feel like I feel like I've been at a therapy session. And this is great. This is great. We're all like writing down like, oh yes, that's what I'm going to do at my next, even around the Thanksgiving table. So you have really, how to deal with our parents, but you really hit on so many great things and so many powerful, and in lieu of time, because we are getting ready to go, we will definitely put up, and I know John has got our ways to get in touch with you ladies. And so we're going to put that up for everybody to be able to get in touch with you and how to contact you and how to bring this into their company. I also want to thank you all so much for being a part of this. We said it was so interactive, so many great skills. We appreciate that. And thank you everyone for joining us for our Wednesday webinar series panel session. To more information, you can go to talentconnections.net, which is up there, or careerspa.net. The other thing I want to make sure is everybody has is the activity code, which is listed here on your screen as well. It is 24-FK752, and this has been approved for 1 professional development credit for recertification through SHRM. We are going to, when we do send out the notes for this, we are going to add on the resources that you gave and the app and all the websites that you mentioned. So we'll definitely be able, and we'll also send out your contact information as well. And a reminder to everyone to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be on August the 14th, and same time from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern time. And thank you so much, ladies, for your time. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you being on here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.